Hi, it's Dave here, and you're listening to The Cinemile. I'm not with my wife, Kathy, today. She is unavailable, so I have my replacement wife here, Sam Clements.
Hello.
We're married now, legally.
I forgot to mention this is how you do it. I see. I succumbed to the Cinemile walk.
You thought that ring was just for show, but no, it's official.
I'm very happy.
Sam is from the 90 Minutes or Less podcast. 90 Minutes or Less Film Festival podcast.
It's the 90 Minutes or Less Film Fest podcast.
There we go.
We shot ourselves in the foot with a very long name there.
Yeah, but it's an awesome concept. So I'm going to have a go at it, but probably butcher it. So Sam invites guests on to watch a movie that is 90 minutes or under and then pitch it as if they are organisers at a festival.
You nailed it.
How did I do?
Absolutely nailed it. So I act as it's a pretend festival, we should reiterate. No one actually comes to the festival. I played a role of a sort of a film festival producer, and I'm trying to build up my lineup of films that have to be 90 minutes or less. And Dave and Kathy were kind enough to come on and suggest a movie, which I think is relevant to tonight's movie.
Yes, it was Toy Story 1. Which is not called Toy Story 1. It was called Toy Story at the time.
Plain old Toy Story. Yeah. 77 minutes long. One of the greatest runtimes we've had on the podcast, I have to say.
Oh, are we in pole position? Has anyone done shorter?
No, we've had a couple of shorter ones. Oh. But doesn't mean they're better films, though.
So we're the best short. We've got the best sort of ratio at the moment.
I think, yeah.
Quality to short duration.
Yeah, if the x-axis is quality of movie and the y-axis is runtime, I think Toy Story is definitely the pinnacle of that.
Yes, we nailed it.
It's also the only Toy Story film eligible for the fest.
Yeah, they get longer and longer. Hey, what's the duration on this while we're on it?
Well, so the Toy Story 2 is like 20 minutes longer than Toy Story 1.
Okay.
Toy Story 3 is the longest. It's 26 minutes longer than Toy Story 1. Toy Story 4, a gentleman's 100 minutes. So 23 minutes longer than Toy Story 1.
100 minutes is such an optimal length for a movie. I mean, obviously I like 90.
90 I would argue is the optimal length,
yeah.
But 100 is not far off.
I'm here to announce my spin-off podcast, 100 Minutes or Less Podcast Festival podcast, Film Festival podcast, coming to your ears soon. Yeah, it's a great concept for a show. Films should be longer. We're always saying shorter. Sorry, I'm really tired.
You're the rival podcast. You're the 90 minutes or over film fest.
Films should be shorter. They're too long. It's a great idea, and it's a really hard challenge. I gotta say, we've really struggled, and I'm sure a lot of your guests have found the same. But go check that out if you want to hear myself and Kathy's thoughts on Toy Story. Where can they find you?
We have a website, 90minfilmfest.com, or if you search 90min Film Fest on your podcatcher of choice, you'll find us. It's a 90, controversially. Went for the numbers rather than letters. Yeah. But we do appear at the top of pod feeds because numbers go before letters. So 90min Film Fest. You can also tweet at us at 90min Film Fest.
Don't start your podcast with the, let me tell you that. The opposite happens. Right, well, let's talk about Toy Story 4. I was not very excited for this movie because I thought the trailers were really bad. And obviously Toy Story 3 had the most perfect ending you could imagine, completing what is possibly one of the greatest trilogies of all time. So for me, I was like, just felt like corporate necessity. And I got a bad vibe from the trailers. They just seemed messy and muddled and retreading old territory. But then all these reviews came in. Apparently it's wonderful. So I don't know. How do you feel about it?
I agree in that Toy Story 3 was one of the greatest third installments of all time, even better than Die Hard with a Vengeance. Which is quite a high bar there.
I mean, I've never really pitted those two movies against each other in my head, but
and you're right, Pixar are coming off a run of sequels. We've had last year we had Incredibles 2, we've had Monsters University, we had Finding Dory. It's a lot of the beloved sort of early films are getting a sequel, and now a fourth installment for Toy Story. But the directors and producers at the company say they also agree Toy Story 3 has the perfect ending. So you're like, well, why bother writing the rest of the press release, guys? Okay, let's just call it off. But then they follow on the second paragraph to say, but then we had this idea. And apparently this idea for this film, which apparently focuses more on the toys rather than on Andy, who was the former human boy in the film, or a bit like a zombie in Toy Story 1.
Former human boy, current human man.
So apparently this is looking at it from the toys' perspective rather than the owner of the toys' perspective. I think there's something in that, but I would also say I think the first 3 Toy Story films focus on the toys plenty.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, let's face it, it's not Andy's story, really. I mean, like you said, he's barely in it.
There's several scenes where he's not in it, but they do all focus around what Andy wants. So I'm interested to see the toys untethered in Toy Story 4.
Why didn't they call it that?
I would watch that.
Toys
film.
untethered. Or, here's my pitch, toys in space.
Also, maybe that's Toy Story 5.
Yeah, right.
That could work.
Here, it's incoming Pixar.
Some people have described this film as a Toy Story road trip movie, which is often what happens when franchises continue to go. They go on holiday, to take a road trip. Going to space is the obvious next point of location.
I know. Well, if they're taking a road trip to space, job done. Wait, they should have called it Toys, Trains and Automobiles, if that was the case.
Would also watch that. Maybe that's Toy Story 6. Okay, we got a new trilogy here, guys.
Why aren't we working for Pixar?
We're wasted walking around Leicester Square pitching these great ideas to the fountains.
No, you guys can't picture this, but we have just done 100 laps of the Leicester Square fountain because we met each other at our destination, so there was nowhere to walk to. And this podcast's premise must be maintained at all costs.
It's very exciting. We're at the centre of film in the UK. All of the film premieres take place here, and as we're talking now, there is actually a statue of Charlie Chaplin, one of the most famous British filmmakers of all time.
There he is.
Right here. So yeah, we're really in the thick of it here.
Almost a toy in itself. Is a statue a toy? Does he come to life?
I think we'd have to ask the makers of Toy Story 4.
What are the rules? All right, let's head in. We'll see you on the other side of Toy Story 4.
I know the perfect toy to help.
Duke Kaboom, Canada's greatest stuntman. Oh, yeah.
Huh?
Yes.
He's posing.
Yeah.
Duke, we need
Hold
to...
on. One more. Oh, yeah.
Hold on!
Whoa! Woody'll save me. I've known that guy my whole life. 2 days.
Is that how we look on the inside? There's so much fluff.
We have to find him, Mom.
Bonnie needs Forky.
Aw, Sheriff Woody always coming to the rescue. That's gonna be quite a jump for you and Duke.
For me?
Let's kaboom.
Hi, we're back. We've seen Toy Story 4 and now we're walking around Leicester Square fountain again.
We are. We have just seen Toy Story 4 on the super screen.
Yes, it was. What's that all about? It's a big screen.
Well, it was a really big screen, not quite as big as IMAX, bigger than a regular screen. So, super screen.
That's the super screen promise.
Yep. It's super screen. Not quite as big as IMAX, but it was still big. We went into the cinema as they were playing the trailers and we had to walk in front of the screen, and it was really big.
It was like being in the movie.
The Lion King trailer was so big.
Yes. And we even tried out the first row seats just for fun, in the very
have to
corner.
see that, yeah, row A.
I mean, who would ever sit there? You basically have this like skewed vision of the, it's not like a flat screen. It's like all big at the bottom right, and
you see about an eighth of the picture.
Yeah.
For your £500, which is what it costs to go to the cinema in Leicester Square now.
I know, it's pretty stupid these days, isn't it? What was the one in the Odeon that there was on Twitter? There was outrage because it was a £52 seat in premium.
The new Odeon. It's they have very, very, very expensive seats.
Yeah. Anyway. One more thing about the super screen. They don't turn on the lights at the end. Now, I don't know if this happens in every screening, but it happened in ours.
Yeah, so I made Dave wait until the very end of the film because I read on Twitter you should do that. And as a treat, for those people who do that, they don't turn on the lights. So everybody... And there was quite a few people who stayed. They must have read the same tweet or whatever that I saw about staying to the end. And we were all sat in the dark waiting.
But like when the super screen goes out, and there's another, it was like pitch black. Like,
we were in space.
All our phones came on. It was really silent and like quite giddy. Everyone got a bit giddy.
I thought it was a fun task though, getting out of the screen by just your phone torchlight.
Yes, it's the closest we'll ever get to feeling like the Chilean miners. Yeah. That was a strange reference. We were in the... I don't know where that came from.
Good way to start a Toy Story 4 review.
Yes, a tragic situation with a happy resolution. See?
This is true.
There you go. It's just like the Chilean miners.
Done. See you later.
That's my review. I thought that was wonderful. I loved it. Loved it all.
What
Brilliant.
a fun film. I didn't expect to laugh so much. It's full of jokes. And a minute ago we were talking about how we felt this film was probably unnecessary. This film is incredibly necessary.
Yes, they wrought a whole brilliant movie out of nothing, which I guess is how most movies are made. But
it was just some words on a page.
But yeah, no, you're right. It's like they squeezed more sentiment and emotion and purpose from a sort of a very dry well, or what we thought was a very dry well. But Jesus Christ, this well goes deep. As soon as you think of like this weird concept that they've created 15 years ago of like toys coming to life, and they're still finding not only like interesting analogies for, I don't know, parenting and individuality, but and the very nature of existence is kind of tackled in this movie, and existential dread. And
it goes deep.
It's so deep. But like, not only that, they're like finding fun and new ways to play with just toys, and it's so this movie is like just joyous and sweet and bittersweet, and as you said, very, very funny.
I think it reminds me that Pixar don't do things for the sake of doing it. They do things they really want to, they really believe in. And I think these films at Pixar take, 6-7 years to make. I know they've been in production on this film for 5 or 6 years. And if they're going to put that much time into it, they must believe in it. So even though we're out here being quite cynical, Toy Story 4, actually there is a reason for this film to exist, and I'm sure it changed a hell of a lot from its conception like 6 years ago. But whatever the original sort of conceit to get this film made, I'm glad they had it, because it feels like a really, I don't want to say nice end, because they might do Toy Story 5, but it feels like a really, like a worthy addition to the Toy Story series. Whatever they might do next, who knows?
Well, that's the thing. That's an interesting thing. It's not quite the sort of neat ending that Toy Story 3 had. I think it's a very beautiful ending. And it's, well, let's talk in Spoiler Street about sort of whose ending it is. But it is an ending.
The film
it is an
has
ending.
an end. And
Yes.
then the cinema is pitch dark.
Yeah, crucially.
I think this is almost this feels like it's a fun, like, extra entry. It doesn't feel like it is a continuation, of course, but it doesn't feel like it's the beginning of anything. It feels like this is a good adventure, and it's sort of like a nice extra, almost like a standalone episode in the Toys' life.
Yeah, that's a nice way to put it.
And I quite enjoyed that.
It's an epilogue, isn't it?
Yeah,
Almost.
exactly. It's a 100-minute long epilogue.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about the plot at all.
No.
Do we normally do that? Or
I
do we
mean,
save
I'm
that?
sure it's anything goes when you're walking around a fountain. Yeah, we should go out. Why don't you give a brief synopsis then?
So a brief non-spoilery synopsis.
Yeah.
So hopefully, listeners, you've seen Toy Story 3, because I think if you have to have seen the whole Toy Story series for this to have the most impact.
Why don't we just say
say
spoilers for the other Toy Stories then?
Spoilers for the other Toy Stories. So, Toy Story 1, right? We followed these toys with their owner, Andy, who's a little boy who they grow up with, and over the course of the original trilogy, more toys join the posse. Originally it's Woody and Buzz, and then we get characters like Jessie and Mr. Pricklepants and a bunch of other people. It's a hedgehog voiced by Timothy Dalton. But Toy Story 3 ends with Andy growing up, because kids grow up, spoiler, and giving his toys to a kid called Bonnie, and he donates his toys to a little girl. So that's the end, and it's a lovely ending to Toy Story 3. And we start this film in Bonnie's bedroom, and Woody, who's the protagonist, is feeling a little bit left out because Bonnie, for whatever reason, isn't interested in the old cowboy doll so much. She wants to play with all the other toys. So I think we start with Woody in the cupboard with an elephant voiced by Mel Brooks.
Yeah, there's sort of 4 older toys here, and I read that it's Mel Brooks, Carl Reiner, what's her name off the Golden Girls?
Betty White?
Betty White's there, and there was someone else as well. But yeah, I mean, wonderful little cameos there.
I think that's a really good way to set this film up, though, because for the last three films, Woody has been the guy who's told all the other toys what to do. He's kind of a jerk in Toy Story 1, as we talked about in the 90-minute episode on that. But over the course of the film, he learns to sort of find his place. He's the leader and the favourite toy and all that sort of stuff. And in this, he's a toy kind of without a kid, really. But Bonnie is a young girl, and she goes to... she's having her first day of kindergarten. She's nervous, she's scared. Woody sees this because he's an old pro. He's had a kid before. So he jumps in Bonnie's bag, which is not what the other toys want him to do. They want Woody to just stand down, let the kid go to school, for God's sake. And he sneaks to kindergarten with Bonnie, and he just wants to make sure she has a good time. Bonnie is having a terrible time in kindergarten until Woody jumps in a trash can and throws an old spork, some glue, a pipe cleaner, and some crayons and a lollipop stick her way.
This is the first 5 minutes.
No, but I think this is important. And Bonnie creates a weird toy, which you may have seen in the marketing, called Forky. And that's kind of really where the film begins, right? The rest of the film is
and then it's kind of
about
like
Forky.
Like you said earlier, it's kind of a road trip movie. But actually, it's kind of feels like several different movies melded together in some ways. And I think maybe I think we both agree we loved it, we recommend it. Let's go to Spoiler Street and get into the nitty gritty. I think everybody should go see this. If you have any love or affinity for these movies at all, you will love this, like undoubtedly. And I would even say there's kind of enough in this. If you haven't seen any of these movies, I don't know who are you, and you got dragged along to it. I think there's enough to enjoy. You get enough in the
you'll be left wondering who some of these characters are, and because there's so many characters now because there's been 4 movies, so many like characters in these films. It's hard to give everybody a moment, but in this film, a lot of characters just have one line, and you're like, oh, that's nice. He had his line. She had her line. That's great. That's a nod to them. So you might think it's a bit weird there's a lot of underdeveloped characters, but seriously, guys, there's 3 movies worth of those guys.
Yeah, you get enough of them.
The right characters have the right amount of screen time. And, it's a fun adventure film with a couple of branching narratives. It's the best-looking Pixar film by a mile. Do you remember how hokey the first Toy Story looked? And like it still looks good. The first Toy Story sort of holds up, but there are certain textures and the dog especially.
Oh, the dog and Sid.
And the humans and the dog in the first Toy Story have not aged well. The rest of them have aged pretty well, I think. And in this film, there's a cat which looks photorealistic, and there's so many humans in the first Toy Story because it's 1995. The company has just started doing feature films. They're not so good at doing humans, so they try and like avoid human faces and hands as much as possible. And when they do show Andy, who's the boy in the first one's face, he looks like a zombie. In this, all of the humans look so good.
I mean, you're right. Like that's 15 years has passed, which is not a long time in the history of cinema, and I wanted to reach out and hug Bonnie. She's so freaking adorable and reminded me so much of our son Oscar. But even just like, you know what, the Pixar animators and a lot of the Disney animators are so good at like picking out those little things that humans do or animals do or inanimate moving toys do that are just like instantly recognizable. Like I saw Oscar in so many of her little mannerisms, like when she was scared and didn't want to go to school, and I was just like, my heart was breaking. And it's like, yeah, that's a load of pixels on a computer making me feel like that. It's fucking
drawn
magic.
by humans who probably have children themselves and want to put that like their collective experience into this character of Bonnie, who is like the ultimate on-screen young person.
The ultimate on-screen young person.
I was going to say toddler, but she's like 4 or 5, so probably post-toddler.
For a second there, I imagined you as like a Steve Jobs character on a stage. Introducing the ultimate on-screen young person. We call her Bonnie.
She's the new toy.
No, you're right, though. It's a collective... It's like... And that's why Pixar kind of gets better and better in the animation side, because they're building on the shoulders of their previous successes. And when you see the credits, which we sat till the end of, there are hundreds of people working on this. So it is a huge collective effort and an incredible effort, because you're right, it looks amazing. At the very beginning of this movie, there's a transition from the Pixar logo to a rainy street. and it's like, right, well, that's just a real rainy street then. That's not
The
animated.
rain looks photorealistic. Like,
Yeah.
there's so many of, even though these are talking toys, so many of the elements in the world look photorealistic. The rain, the cat, I think the textures on people's clothes. A lot of the toys are plastic or porcelain, but they're wearing like cotton, little tiny cotton clothes, and they look incredible. And I kept finding myself going, oh, that cat looks good. Oh, that shirt looks great.
You know,
Also-
you were saying that out loud. The whole time.
that was the guy. Yeah. He was so annoying. And also what they've done is, because there's been, the series has started like 24 years ago. These toys are very well played with. They've had little scuffs.
Oh my God, is it 24 years? I
Yeah,
thought
95.
Oh Christ. Okay. Sorry.
So they've added little scuffs, and like Buzz Lightyear's a plastic toy full of stickers, and his stickers are starting to peel off, and Woody's got some like scuffs on his plastic shoes. And do you remember in Toy Story 2 where Woody loses an arm and a guy has to sew his arm back on?
Yeah.
Well, you can see the stitches on his arm from Toy Story 2.
Oh, man,
like,
I
they've
didn't
gone to
notice that.
town on the detail. There's also a really creepy transition where the camera goes into Woody's eye and you see like the makeup of his eye, and then it sort of pulls back out again. Don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, when he's on the swing with Andy. Yeah.
We've never seen Woody's eyes that detailed before. You
No,
can see
I
into
mean,
his toy
if
soul.
If there's anything to recommend this movie, it's a deep look into Woody's plastic eye hole. Right, let's move on to the spoiler section of the fountain. Here, let's go deep. Yeah, it's actually in the centre of the fountain. I'm afraid we have to dive in.
The spoiler fountain. Great.
Splash noises. So, there's quite a lot to unpack here. I'm just going to throw something out there. Keanu Reeves.
Okay, so Duke Kaboom.
Yeah.
The Canadian. Yes, we Canada.
I mean, there's so many funny lines in
The
this.
Evel Knievel type doll. So yeah, I guess there's a bunch of new characters. Keanu Reeves. This is Keanu Reeves' first U-rated movie, first family-rated movie.
Is that right?
Which is I guess it sort of makes sense, but it's also kind of incredible. The guy is like 50 years old and he's been working for a hell of a long time.
Bill and Ted PG?
No, I think they must have had some cuss words.
Yeah. But Duke Kaboom, what do we think of him? I thought he was quite funny.
I guess he's based on what I know as an Evel Knievel doll, which I never had because I wasn't alive in the 70s, but I get the reference. I've seen it on other things. He's a lot of fun. A stunt driving toy who has got an emotional trauma in his past.
Vrajan! I laughed every time he said Vrajan, just because I don't know, that was a really funny name.
He's got this. I guess this is what Toy Story does so well. All of the films do. They deal with the toys, trauma or some sort of issue they're having, and the films help them get over it. His is that he isn't as good as he is in the adverts, which is something that every kid knows from seeing an incredible commercial and then the toy not doing the things it does on screen. But he is aware that he isn't as good as his commercials, so he is afraid of doing stunts.
I mean, the psychological complexity to all of these things. We haven't even covered Forky wanting not to exist from the second he exists,
Yes.
which is one of the most profoundly disturbing concepts, while also being simultaneously hilarious as he tries to leap into the trash at every available opportunity.
He's so... Like, when we saw him in the trailers and the posters, I think you mentioned the trailer didn't do it for you before we saw the film, and I think everybody was like, what the hell is Forky? He's like some googly eyes on a spork. But he is a lot of fun, and you're right, that whole existential crises that exists from second one with him is incredible. I did not see that coming in this film.
No.
And for it to actually be handled really, really well.
But yeah, they tackle... That's what's so good about these movies. Like, you can enjoy them for what they are, as sort of fun surface level stuff. But as soon as you start to, like, kind of think about any of this for even a minute, then it's like, whoa, there's like some really deep ideas under the surface here. Like, Bonnie literally created like an intelligence.
Yeah.
Right? and she is God. She created an intelligence who does not want to exist or wants to be trash. He wants to be something that he's not. That he wants to be a former life. And there's even a moment where he's literally birthed into existence out of that bag.
Yeah.
Right? That's literally like coming out of the birth canal. It was like, there's so much like it was profoundly like interesting ideas in the whole Toy Story universe, because And then Woody is kind of almost like his father figure in many ways. Like he's holding his hands and he's like a toddler dragging his heels as he's trying to explain to him about the world and
keep him safe. You're right. It's like looking after a well, I guess as soon as your child can crawl, they probably want to crawl towards things which may or may not hurt them.
Yes.
And he's doing that for the whole film, trying to shepherd Forky back into Bonnie's arms because Bonnie loves him so much.
Toddlers are constantly trying to kill themselves. Seriously.
But it makes you wonder what I guess we sort of know by this point, the fourth movie in, what the rules of the Toy Story are. When there's adults around, when there's humans around, the toys sort of go lifeless and they just flop down wherever they're laying. But when the adults aren't around, they can talk, they can run around, they can do all sorts of stuff. And occasionally they blur the lines, like in the end of Toy Story 1, all of the toys come back sort of from the dead and they spook Sid.
Yeah.
And in this film, there's a character who poses as a sat-nav, and the parents in the car hear the sort of voice of the sat-nav through this toy, and hilarity ensues. But it does make you question what the rules are. Like, when do they become sentient?
I mean, they were just these toys were just flying around left, right, and centre. Like they're driving prams and skunks through like busy pedestrian areas. It's like it is becoming harder and harder to conceive that nobody has noticed these toys. But like on that note of like playing with the rules and all that, we do get one of the best gags in the movie, which is the Keenan and Kel voiced plush toys whose names I've forgotten. Ducky
Bunny and Ducky, voiced by Keegan-Michael Key and Jordan Peele, the director of Us and Get Out.
Yeah, Jordan Peele. Sorry, Key and Peele.
Key and Peele, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is great because those guys have sort of finished doing Key and Peele, but this is like one last hurrah. If you've seen their show, which is incredibly good, their sketch show, this is like one last hurrah for Key and Peele playing Ducky and Bunny, two toys who are at a fairground, and because the game is rigged, Bill Hader voices the guy who is like the attendant.
Oh, really?
Who doesn't really have a whole lot to say, but I think he was like, cool Buzz Lightyear doll at one point.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're the top prize on a game that no kid can ever win, so they're never going to be given to a kid, and they've been up there for 3 years, and then Buzz comes along and busts them out.
I love that idea, but they played the rule of three of comedy very well with them explaining how they were going to get the key. I mean, just that long walk down the end of that punchline on the third one with the woman going home and having a glass of wine in the bath, and you know it's coming, and I was just like, I was losing it. It was so good. And then this bonus little gag of how did you get the key, and she just puts it in front of them. It's like, this movie is like so funny.
So many of the jokes are visual jokes as well. Like they use everything on screen to tell these gags, which is what I love about Pixar. It's such a rich experience seeing it on a big screen, because not a second is wasted. I wouldn't cut anything out of this movie, and this is coming from the guy who loves films that are 90 minutes or less. This film is perfect at 100 minutes. This film is perfect at 100 minutes. I mean, I would be selfish and maybe say I'd like a bit more, but it probably doesn't need a bit more. It probably is absolutely fine at 100 minutes.
Yeah, you're right.
These guys know what they're doing.
It was pretty bang on. Like, even though it felt like, and I kind of alluded to it earlier, and this is my problem with the trailers, it kind of is hard to even make a trailer for this, because what is the core of this movie? Like, is it... I would probably say this is Woody's movie, with a sort of Bo Peep as the sort of secondary main character. Like, Buzz Lightyear's a background character.
Yeah, it's weird, actually, seeing Buzz, who has been consistently, like, the dual protagonist through these films. Like, Toy Story 1 is about him realising he's a toy and Woody realising to not be a jerk. and in this film, Buzz really doesn't have a whole lot to do. He sort of shadows Woody for a bit.
Yeah, it's very much Woody's story, and it's very much Woody's ending. But I like that they brought Bo Peep back, and we should say Kathy couldn't make it, but she wanted us to address the Bo Peep issue, because she knew she was in it, and how she would be portrayed, because if you've listened to us talking about the original Toy Story, Kathy had deep concerns about Bo Peep as a character rewatching it, because she's got like 2 lines in that movie, and it's all basically
She's the only female character, I think, in Toy Story 1 of a toy. The other characters are a mum and a little girl, sister, and Bo Peep. And yeah, she's Woody Squeeze.
Yeah, that's kind of all she says.
She's
like,
sort of this
hey,
idol of lust for Woody.
I'll see. Yeah, that's all she is. She's a symbol of like, hey, maybe I'll put the sheeps down early tonight.
Yeah. She's a very
Basically.
flirty, like China doll.
Yeah, so there's very little to her, but boy, they've clearly addressed that. She's basically Charlize Theron from Mad Max Fury
It
Road.
felt like she was in the
Right.
Fury Road, right? Yeah.
Because she's awesome.
In Toy Story 2, she has a really similar role as well. She's like an object of desire for Woody. Also has about 2 lines in that film. And then in Toy Story 3, she's weirdly absent. There's a line like, oh, it's not the same without Bo Peep. And like, okay, cool. They maybe couldn't get the actor back or something. But
Annie
no.
Potts from Ghostbusters.
Annie Potts, the incredible Annie Potts. But it feels like they've realised that they did Bo Peep wrong in Toy Story 3, or maybe throughout the whole series. And yeah, a major character in this.
major character, and a great character. Like, and a perfect sort of like, you spoke about them having the perfect story and reason to do this. And I did read like years ago when they. One of the head of Disney at the time, as they were developing the script, said it was a romantic comedy, and I don't think it's quite a romantic comedy, but certainly it is. That's the core of Woody's sort of emotional journey, isn't it? And it makes for a beautiful ending, and I love this idea of like finding new purpose in your life after your kids have grown up, right? Because if we look at this as an epilogue to the first 3 Toy Stories, which are an easy analogue for being a parent. The third one is literally watching your child who you've watched grow up and spend all these magic moments together go off to college, and they don't need you anymore. And there's even a line in this movie where Woody says something like, I think he's talking to Forky, and he says, and he went off and had all these experiences without us, and we're no longer present. And there's something about retirement in here, or finding a purpose in, a new existence for yourself, or a new meaning, and making the most of that, and embracing it and loving life. Like I like what Bo Peep's sort of philosophy. She's happy, and it's like the whole thing is about Woody changing his perspective, which she helps him do. He sees her as a lost toy. And, they have that lovely line where she says, "You're the one who's lost."
Do you think the analogue here is that, because the toys always call the kids my kid, and do you think that, so the toys are parents, and, Woody has a second lease of life with a new kid, a second child, and he goes through that, but eventually the kids grow up and they get rid of the toys, or your kids grow up and they go and live their own life, and it's sort of about Woody becoming okay with being on his own, being an adult with no children.
Yes, and actually there's something, that's exactly right, and there's something interesting about that from the female experience, which obviously we can't comment on, and it's, again, I'm only trying to anticipate what Kathy would say, but Bo Peep is literally, she's almost saying, she's turning her back on having kids, or that opportunity was taken away from her, and she's embracing her own life and carving out her own, say, path or career or whatever in a world that was telling her to do one thing. So it's very scary to Woody, who's very more conventional in many ways, and sees you have to have a kid. You have to. He's a family man, family values potentially, and she's what he sees her as outside of society's conventions. Who's literally created her own identity in society away from all of that. Anyway, I'm probably reading too much into this, but there's also literally Woody gives up his own voice to give another woman her voice. There's something interesting there. The Little Mermaid famously has been criticized by feminists for doing the opposite of that, of taking away the female voice. And this is, you could look at this as in the broader cultural context of, a man handing on the baton to a woman, or at least giving her the chance to live the life that and privilege that he's had. It's privilege, isn't it? Like Gabby points out, you've not only had the privilege of these happy experiences once, but you've had it twice, and all I want is just one of those small moments, one of those little chances you have, and I loved what they did with her as a character.
She's
as well.
quite a tragic figure. I have a new character called Gabby, voiced by Christina Hendricks, who's in an antique shop, and she said she's a talking doll made in the same sort of time as Woody. They have the same voice box, like pull string voice box, and she says at one point she was defective from the factory, and she asked Woody when he was made. He says the 50s. It's now 2019, so for like almost 70 years she has been on her own waiting for a kid. Like, incredibly tragic figure.
When you think of just the literally infinity and beyond is what these these toys don't seem to die as such, even
no,
right? And so she's faced 70 years in a cabinet. I mean, the absolute horror of most of the potential existence of this sort of sub-society that exists under our feet that they've created is really awful as soon as you start to really think about it.
What I like about her is she's sort of the villain of the piece, but in Toy Story and in a lot of Pixar films, there isn't a villain who's outright evil. It's a villain who has a past trauma who's trying to deal with it, and I think she's a really good example of that. She isn't just doing this for the sake of it, she's doing this because she wants to be played with. And she's so desperate, she's willing to take Forky prisoner and willing to literally steal, open Woody up and rip his voice box out. And she has those ventriloquist dummy henchmen.
Oh, they're so good.
Benson.
How good. I love them. And I love how they moved. They animated them so well. Like this clunky head kind of wobbling left and right, and these arms that don't really work.
Well, they're like zombies.
They're dummies. They're puppets, aren't they? They're all head, and they're designed to be held by a hand. So there's no support mechanism. I thought it was just genius and horrifying.
So often they fall over head first, and they just throw themselves because the head's the heaviest thing. It goes. That's a good. I didn't notice that. That's a great point.
I mean, it was just wonderful, and just like that little look that when Forky says goodbye to Benson at the end, and he just it's like, oh my god. I love this film. I could talk about this forever.
But there's so much going on in it. It's. I think if you went back for second, third watches, you would find even more detail in there, because I noticed a couple of little Easter eggs to other Pixar films, but I'd love to go back and have a proper look.
Anything come to mind? I didn't really
if you've seen the film Up, there's a badge, like a grape badge, that the Boy Scout has.
Oh,
and,
yes.
Billy
It,
brings it to Bo Peep, and she goes, nah. And if you've seen Coco, the lead character's got a guitar in that, and they're on the prize stand at the end in the theme park.
Oh, well
so you
spotted,
can win
man.
the guitars from Coco.
All right, I'm glad we brought you on, Sam. You've got an eagle eye for this stuff, even in the
just a
pitch
nerd.
black. All right, well, we'll leave it there. Any other anything we're missing off that you'd like to?
So the director tweeted to stay during the credits because there's something at the end. I would say there are lots of scenes in the credits which are worth watching. The one at the end is for hardcore Pixar fans.
Yeah.
But it's also quite a nice payoff to a gag with the Combat Carl dolls, which they do have they've been in the Toy Story series since Toy Story 1. Sid is blowing up Combat Carls.
Yeah.
So it's kind of nice to see these Combat Carl dolls. And there's a sad little one who doesn't get a high five.
I love that. You mentioned visual gags. That was such a brilliant visual gag. It just they kept paying it off in the background, and I was like, no, you've got to resolve this, and I'd forgotten about it. So when it finally came around in the end credits, I was like, yeah, all right, it was worth it. Carl Weathers does that voice as well.
I love that. They get the best people in to do voices, like Timothy Dalton, who was in Toy Story 3 as quite a big character in this. He has one line, but Timothy Dalton will come back for one line.
Such a good line, though. It had me in stitches. It was one of my favourite characters in Toy Story 3.
So, I mean, you have a child who will grow up soon and will want to play with toys.
He's growing up this very minute.
He's growing up as we speak. Of the new toys like Forky, do you think that's a potential favourite for Oscar?
Guys,
that's a good question,
going
because
the wrong way.
It's not a very child-friendly... They're going the wrong way. We are going the right way.
We are going the right way.
Which is clockwise around a fountain on lap 50. It's not a very, like, it's an interesting one because it's not a very, like, attractive toy. Do you know what I mean? Like, I can only see this toy having value with the sort of emotional connectivity with this movie.
Because she made it with her bare hands.
Yes, well, exactly. But, like, how are they going to manufacture Forky toys? Are they just going to be all one bit of plastic? I mean, I presume they're not going to sell. It's like make your own Forky with a piece of used lollipop stick and a bit of twine. Although that would be a genius.
Well, it's a gift for parents everywhere. Look, I got you an official Forky doll.
Yeah, as you lick off the end of your ice cream. And there you go. Yeah, I mean, Forky was very charming. He definitely grew on me. He kind of disappears in the middle of the movie a little bit.
I think you miss him as well. Because he's pure comedy, and there's a bit of emotional heart to this film, as there are in a lot of Pixar films. And I think he has to step aside to let the plot move forward. But it's so good when he comes back.
And his sort of journey is resolved kind of very early on. I mean, like, you get that moment where Woody tells him, you know, he has the realization, I'm Bonnie's trash, which is quite a lovely moment. But that's it for him. Then he's like, all right, I'm in. I'm going to go back to Bonnie. And then it's just kind of like plot machination for him, which is interesting because the movie kind of positioned it a lot as like put him in the front, but he's kind of secondary. I mean, it is.
I think he's a MacGuffin.
That's right. That's exactly
to bust out a screenwriting phrase, he becomes this object which is the focus of everybody's sort of attention and desires. But he's already had his arc. When he realizes he's a toy and Bonnie loves him, he's happy, which happens quite early on. And the rest of the film is the other toys trying to rescue him from Gabby Gabby. So he is the Maltese Falcon.
Let's leave it there. I don't know how to get up. Forky is the Maltese Falcon is a sentence I wasn't expecting to hear in 2019, but here we are. Sam, thank you for coming on. Much appreciated. Thank you for walking around this fountain a dizzying number of times with me.
I've had a lovely time walking around this fountain. We've seen many tourist groups and buskers and a whole host of special guests for your show.
There's people on benches here wondering what we are doing. Sam, where can everyone find you? Give them one more reminder.
You can find the 90 Minutes or Less Film Fest on Twitter at 90min Film Fest. So it's a number 90. And if you're in London on the 14th of September, we're doing a live show at King's Place as part of the London Podcast Festival. So come along. We're going to watch a 90 Minutes or Less film at the festival, and then we're going to do a podcast with friends of ours, Helen Zaltzman and Martin Ostwick. They haven't chosen their movie yet. There's a lot of pressure on them to do this. But when they do that, we'll watch a film together.
Podcasting legends.
And
lovely people. All right, thanks, Sam. You can find us at the Cinemile on Twitter, etc. If you like what we're doing here, head over to our Patreon and you can subscribe and get loads of extra podcast episodes.
I should say I'm a Patreon subscriber. I love the extra episodes.
Oh, thanks, Sam.
You do retro movies and you did all of Game of Thrones, which was a lot of fun because I needed someone to talk it through, and having you guys in my ears really helped me process that.
Having someone talk at me
really about Game of Thrones.
Right, thanks for listening, everyone.
Bye. Bye.
He's playing us out.
That was great. A musical end.
What about Buzz Lightyear stuff?
I am Buzz Lightyear, Space Ranger.
And then Woody's like, you are a toy!
Oh, yeah, that's pretty good. Woody.
Do the flying thing he does. Do it.
To infinity and your mom.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
That's not right.
You sure?
No, that's not right.
I'm pretty sure that's it.
No, let me show you. To insanity and a blonde.
What do you even
That's how it goes.
saying?
No, that's how it goes.
To immunity and respond.
To indecency
To infrequently.
Hey, guys, you got it all wrong.
It's to infinity and beyond. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
You can't go to infinity, dummy. It's impossible.
He over here talking about infinity.
You don't go beyond infinity.
You don't know nothing about science.